I'm a Latina and I'm the daughter of an adoptee from El Salvador, as far as I know. I decided that since my power is out, I wanted to come in here and discuss some things I've been doing besides makeup. I am currently working on my genealogy tree. I noticed that I looked different than my parents. I looked different than my brother, that I didn't look like my grandparents really. Really, the only people that I identified with in my family at the time was my grandfather because of the skin color, more so than anything, and my cousin Samantha, because my cousin Samantha has olive skin, and then the rest of my cousins are very fair. Before my mother ever even told me what my ethnicity was, I thought, and I'm gonna tell you, is I thought I was Asian. Like, I thought I was Chinese because that's also, I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 92. So for me, I really, being born in the middle of nowhere in Elk River in Minnesota, well, I wasn't born in Elk River, but being raised predominantly in Minnesota is really what I'm trying to say here. Anyways, the point is I was raised in Elk River predominantly. So, and in a very sheltered, very red, in my opinion, redneck family. Ugh, sorry, there's like bugs everywhere. But a very redneck family, it's just how I view the family looking back now. When I looked at my mother, when I looked at her husband, and I looked at my half brother, now that I understand it's a half brother, I really didn't identify with the family. I didn't understand. I didn't understand why I looked different. Among other things, I was also treated different, but that's not for today's story. And I began to start asking questions, which were, why do I look different, right? So when I was a kid, and I don't even have pictures really of that time period of my life anymore. Pictures I had, they were stolen out of my wallet a long time ago by some crackhead, and I don't even know where I was. I think it was in like Blaine, at Goodwill. I think it was Blaine or it was Coon Rapids, I don't know. But that's also besides the point. As a reference, for anybody watching, I used to get called Pocahontas in school because I just always looked very indigenous, right? And I always just thought, oh, I just maybe look more Native American than my parents, or maybe I got these traits from my mom because she claimed to be Native American, or I try to make logic as a 7-year-old that really didn't make any sense, which is why I came to the why do I look different? Because really, the only time me and my mom ever looked alike is when she used fake tanner, which is fine. There's no shade against fake tanner. I've used it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. I'm just saying that they tried to hide it, and that's where the problems it created it, right? Like, I just made it for me, it just kind of like felt like a no. For me, it felt like a lie because it was a lie. I know, like, maybe the effort was to make me feel like I wasn't different by not letting me know I was different, but I think they failed miserably with that perspective or that approach, because they treated me different anyways. Again, another story for another day. At the age of 7, like I keep stating, I asked those questions. My mother brought out, with Ernie at the time, that's her husband at the time. My step, I want to put it like that. I don't have any of those things anymore, but back in that moment, I remember she called, we were sitting outside. We sat outside on a day very similar to today, in a temperament very similar to this, with the sun. Like, it actually was a very similar lighting situation as now. And she told me that I was right and that Ernie was my father, which it was obvious. Like, come on, white guy, blue eyes, like. And I was having issues because I was like, why is he telling me what to do? Who is he actually? Because I don't feel any kind of relation whatsoever to this individual. Like, I don't feel quite literally anything. She had like a family album that she opened while we were all sitting, and she was flipping through a couple pictures, confirming the fact that yes, she was my birth mother, and that also this individual that she randomly had a photo of was my birth father, if you want to put it like that. I, at this point in my life, just refer to my mother as either the cunt or the womb, and then him as sperm donor. That's really it. They're just carriers at this point in my life, and that's really how, I think the Lord intended to keep it. That's how I'm gonna leave it. And she told me that, I remember she told me that I was born out of wedlock, which as a Christian, that's like a huge no-no. So, now as an adult, I'm like, oh, that's why you treated me like garbage. Got it. Or maybe it's because I have a lot of facial similarities to my biological sperm donor. Also makes you a piece of shit of a human. Sorry, it does. And I remember she told me my biological father's name was Ross Vicente Harmon, and she had like two pictures and no, it was just one picture, I think. And I think it was purposefully the shittiest picture possible because I couldn't even barely see his face. I couldn't even tell what he looked like. He looked just like any random brown man you could pick off the street, put a ball cap on him with a perm, and call him my biological father. Like, that's literally how bad the picture was. But as a kid, I was like, okay, that's cool. That's my biological father. Something to kind of hang on to, I guess. Whatever. And she, I didn't know as a kid what El Salvador was or where that was. Also, mind you, growing up in Elk River, Minnesota, going to a religious school, nah. They did not teach just global or international studies. That was not a thing for them. She explained to me it's something like a Mexican, but from a different country, so I could understand, because as a kid, I genuinely thought that Mexican equals Spanish. That when you're Mexican, you speak Mexican. And that's just because that's how I was raised. Okay? So that's just how traumatizing my, I should say emotionally and spiritually traumatizing it is as a brown person. Because essentially when people look at me now as an adult, they don't see a white person, which is another story and another topic of another video, okay? And I honestly, I'm gonna tear up even. Listen. Okay, I'm composed. So, I kind of held on to that, and I forgot what El Salvador or Salvadoran was, and if I ever tried to ask my mom to ever discuss that with me or explain it to me, that would have been an issue or a problem, and it would have bothered her. Why do I want to talk about it? Why do I want to know about that? Why am I curious? That's just how she was, even though logically, if you're telling me that's where my roots are from, I would be interested, right? I think that's a natural human reaction, is to want to understand where you're coming from, your heritage, your identity, maybe why you feel a certain way and so forth, or maybe why you could have a perspective of the world that maybe your peers don't have. I think all of those are a part of the epigenetics. At this point in my life, all the way through the age 15, I never saw a picture of my biological father or sperm donor. Let's just continue to call him sperm donor. It's just easier like that. So I never saw an image of my sperm donor. I never saw, I never really saw how he looked. And growing up, I always had friends ask me if I was adopted, if my mom was really my mom, why do we look so different? And, and I'm going to put pictures of my mom on the screen so you can see how she looks as well. I definitely picked up a few facial characteristics from her, but that's not the major facial characteristics that I have, if that makes sense. As an example, Again, I got used to get called Pocahontas by all of my friends in school, and I remember that. And you know, at the time, I never really thought much about it or why they referred to me like that, other than as a kid in a religious school, we were allowed to watch Disney movies, and Pocahontas could have been one of them that we were allowed to watch. It depended family to family. Whatever your pastor said was okay to watch is what you could watch at home. If the pastor said you can watch Shrek, you can watch Shrek. If he says you can watch Harry Potter, you can watch Harry Potter. If he says you can't, then you can't. So, most of the people that I went to school with were allowed to watch Disney movies. Or to any of my friends back in the time that would come over to my house and like spend the night or whatever. I used to have a little like couple dolls and stuff that I kept on my windowsill. And I've had people reference I had a Mexican doll. They were like, "You kind of look like that doll." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Like nowadays, I'm like, "Oh my God." Back then, I was like, "Yeah, kind of, I guess." But I don't think I'm Mexican. You know, I couldn't remember. But there was a time period where I just started telling people that it's like Mexican, but I couldn't remember the name, to the point where I was like, "Yeah, Mexican," because I was like, I don't care, because I got sick and tired of it, of being asked, and then people thinking I'm Asian when I'm not Asian, all this crap. It was just super annoying. And the 90s, tell me about it. So, you know, around the age 15, my mother divorces, or 14, yeah, 14, my mother divorces Ernie. We're in Florida now, okay? Like, we moved to Florida. We're there for 6 months, maybe, and then she files for divorce, which is giving scheming. It's giving planned. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. I don't care. And she was at an all-time low because she had lost full or sole custody of my half-brother during this time period. Essentially, when I was living in Wesley Chapel, Florida, she contacts my biological father through MySpace. Yes, back in the time it was MySpace. She found his MySpace. I think she always knew where he was, okay? And that's just, again, another story, another tea time for another day. And she was asking him for money because she had to pay child support, right? She lost sole custody of my half-brother. Now she has to pay child support to Ernie. So she has to pay child support, she has to pay for rent, she has to pay for food, then she's on food stamps. There's a lot of shit going on. It was crazy, it was wild. I was homeless as a teenager with my mother. We were going from house to house at some points in time. My sole survival through my teenage years was because somehow she had managed to monetize her vagina, basically, through lonely men, and somehow procuring a home through her vagina, right? Through a fake relationship. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. The relationship was purely transactional. You give me a house, I give you pussy. That's my perspective as an adult living through life with her as a teenager. I had to agree with her, or make it a deal with her, that before I could speak to him, I would promise her that I would never meet him alone, that I would never talk to him without her consent, all this garbage. And I was like, yeah, okay. You're not going to keep me from my biological father. Like, this is crazy. But yeah, whatever. Let's do this, right? And I start talking to him, and I know that he was asking some questions because he was hesitant, which, duh, if someone came forward saying you have a daughter, wouldn't you also be hesitant that you have a kid? I would. Especially me, right? Like, where the fuck was I? I have a vagina. But it got to a point where I was able to text him through a secret phone that I had hidden from my mother. And we had met outside of her consent, behind her back. when I was 15 years old. We go to the Waffle House. I remember, this is before I had to go gluten-free. He took me to the Waffle House. We chatted a little bit there. Then we went to a park nearby and we chatted there a little bit. And he gave me some gifts and a little bit of money. And obviously I was supposed to keep this a secret as well. But I do remember that when I looked at his face and his eyes, his mannerisms, things like that, I was like, oh my God, I did. I did come from that. Oh my God. So it was just like without a doubt, he was without it. Like I had no doubt. That's what I'm trying to say. Without a doubt, he's my sperm donor. I'm saying. So we kind of kept that conversation, this kind of interaction, this money giving situation on the down low, because he had found out that all the money that he had given to my mother, my womb giver, womb haver, whatever, all the money that he sent, that he had requested it to be gifted to me, since she was requesting money, she kept it all and gave me like $10 here, $20 there, from all the money he sent. And I guess he had sent like 1,000 something crazy. So he was pissed. So that's why he stopped giving money to begin with, is because he found out that she was lying to him, which is going to be a common theme here. They both are horribly, tragically, chronic liars. It's a choice. Listen, it's a choice. Like, you have to make a decision that you're just not going to be a chronic liar and you're going to accept the shame for things. They aren't, so that's fine. And I remember this was around the time my mother was dating some guy named Terry. Man, I feel bad for the guy. And it was around like Halloween. I remember it was around Halloween when he came down to see me, because I remember going out to dinner with Terry at some cantina in Wesley Chapel, and everything was like Halloween costumes, skeleton. It wasn't Dia de los Muertos. It was for Halloween. So I remember that because I also had to go. I was going to some kind of like gathering, if you will, and kind of fast forward, I lose touch with him for a while, for many years. I didn't really care to keep in touch, I'm going to be honest. I know that my mother was, I mean, I shouldn't say I didn't care, like I cared, but I didn't force it. Like I tried, but I didn't force it. And it was because she had found out that we had seen each other behind her back, which in retrospect I understand as a mother why she didn't want me to meet him in person, and in retrospect with my own personal experiences with this individual, my sperm donor, I don't know. I was lucky, I'll say, because I definitely shouldn't have met this individual as a lone teenager, minor, 15, yeah. Shouldn't have done that, even though he was purely biological. It's just like really stupid. 18 rolls around and my mother kicks me out. I'm like maybe a week or two into being 18 and my mother kicks me out. And there's a whole lot of tea, there's a whole lot of drama, there's a whole lot of craziness that goes into that whole story that I can't even discuss in this video. Otherwise this video could actually be like 6 hours long, and that's freaking crazy. Reverse. So there was an ongoing situation where my mother kept requesting child support to Ross, and he kept denying the child support because he wanted a paternity test. And then because he wanted a paternity test, she was declining the paternity test. And she was declining the paternity test because she didn't want him to sue her for parental rights the same way that Ernie sued her for parental rights to my half-brother. Okay? That's so you just understand. I remember being jerked around at 17 years old. Now I remember. We did talk, but again, under surveillance, whatever. And I did. We did talk, sometimes under surveillance. It wasn't much, but he kept pushing for a paternity test. That he refused to pay child support that she was asking for until she proved to him that I was his daughter, right? So, not long, maybe a month before I turned 18, she took me in to get the paternity test. It was just enough amount of time that she had held off for me to take this test. So that way, even if by the time he sued for parental rights, I would already be 18. He wouldn't need to sue for them because I would be 18. I would be an adult. That's how fucked up this is. Then, at 18, 1 to 2 weeks into me being 18, I can't even remember. I don't even care. My mother kicks me out. She honestly couldn't wait to kick me out, and I couldn't wait to be the hell away from her. She's an extremely toxic, horrible individual. Evil individual. So, I was like, fine, I'll leave. So she said, get your stuff, get out. You have until this time to get your stuff out. I called a friend, tried to get all my stuff out by that time. She decided to lock me out anyways. Whole nother story. I was homeless, so I was living with my friend in high school at the time for a little bit. And then I was able to get in touch with Ross and ask for help since I was his offspring, right? To pay for rent or to find some way to stay in school or stay in the area in Elk River so I can finish my senior year, because I wanted to finish my senior year and I had a job at the time. He agrees to help me. He gets me a phone. He has a place for me to live in Elk River. He pays the rent for the room. And rightfully so, like, I wanted a relationship, so I was okay with all of the help, and I wanted to get to know this individual. I genuinely wanted to get to know this individual. The problem was that I was very disappointed. And this man really disappointed me in more ways than one. So the cliche when, people find their adopted parents and they're disappointed, it is very real and it sucks really bad. Because at 18, I actually was more adult and I was more grown, or I had matured enough to be able to see that I didn't want him around me. I didn't want anything to do with him, but I was stuck and I was homeless. So I was like, I don't know what to do. Eventually, I rather be homeless than be in his care. For another story for another day. It's too juicy. It's too much. There's too many things going on already in a main story. Too many side quests. During the short time period that he had me living with one of his coworkers, he paid for groceries, he paid for my room, he paid for whatever, and my phone. I had opportunities where he would come over for weekends to this house where I was staying at, and he would sleep on the sofa. I would sleep up in my room, and we would be spending some extra time together that normally we wouldn't have. And I would try to ask questions specifically related to my heritage, right? Which I look back now, and I'm like, damn, I don't know why I put up for that for so long, but in short, he said the story he told me about his genetic history or his family truths or history of his life, whatever you want to call it, it was all lies. Adopted from El Salvador. He was only a baby. He doesn't remember his language. He was raised here his whole life. He doesn't know anything. Another story was I was adopted at around 10 years old, brought to the United States by my mother and father. They took care of me. After I turned 18, we stopped talking to each other. That actually sounds more close to the truth of what my husband and I have been figuring out with my genetic history and tree, and it's always the same brick wall. He told me details like his father's name was Chente and his mother's name was Rosa, and that they were dead, which I don't even know if that's true either, because there's so many very sad things that were happening with international adoptions, especially international adoptions, that involved a lot of child abduction, lies. I mean, to me, it just sounds like child trafficking, if you want me to be honest, in the guise of good Samaritanship. Am I grateful that I was born in the US over probably another country? Yeah. But that doesn't erase the root, even if it was bad. You know what I mean? Any good thing, any bad thing done with, oh my gosh, any bad thing done with good intentions still is a bad thing, I think. Right? I think so. I think it has a lot of gray areas, but I think so. He told me that he doesn't remember his language. I asked him if he spoke Spanish, and he told me no, that he lost it all. I asked him why he didn't have any toys, and he said that he gave all of his toys away to his friends when he went to school. I mean, he told truths coated with lies at the same time. It was like every time I wanted to ask him something, the story would change a little bit. So I gave up trying to ask him things. I became very uninterested in him. Also, the fact that he's very annoyed by his appearance as an adult, because he doesn't look like a white American. He looks like an indigenous man, quite literally. He doesn't like to be called anything but Ross. He doesn't want to hear even hardly his middle name. He doesn't like hearing Spanish. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing ever. He's completely denying his whole roots, his whole heritage, everything. He just wants to be seen as an American, and that's it. And I think that's kind of a sad way to live, honestly, because I think that you're more than just the country that you're currently living in. And I think that knowing your heritage and your culture is important because it helps you better understand you as an individual. Or maybe why you see the world a certain way, or why you think a certain way, or maybe why you're spiritual over Christian, right? Epigenetics. It's what I keep saying, epigenetics. So essentially, where I'm at as a grown ass woman is I'm still trying to reclaim my identity. And it has been a very bumpy and confusing ride for myself. And feeling so displaced from my culture and my heritage that I present to people as, or how they perceive me, is really, it's not important. Oh my god. I just want to better understand myself, and I also think that it's very cool to maybe be able to have the opportunity to meet a family member or hear family history or see where they come from, where they, all of those things that come with a family history, including the trauma. I was sitting on this porch about 2 weeks ago, and I walked into my bedroom, my husband and I's bedroom, and I expressed that I need to know where he's from. I need to know what the truth is. I need to know more than what I already know. So I have already taken a DNA test from Helix through Health Partners. So specifically, I don't remember exactly the time frame. I know it was around the pandemic, maybe right after the pandemic. Yeah, I want to say it was after the pandemic when I came back from Chicago. So about maybe 4 years ago. Yeah. About 4 years ago, I took a DNA test because I want to. Like, why wouldn't you want to? It's fun, right? But the biggest reason is because my biological father was adopted from El Salvador, and there's so many secrets behind his origins, right? There's that. Secondly, everyone kept asking me all the time if I was Asian. So then I was like, what if he lied? What if I'm Asian? So I took the test. Or what if I was like part Asian? You know, you never know, right? Genes are crazy. I took the test. Me and my husband both took the test. He came back Spanish. Wow. I came back with a huge whopping percentage coming out of Central America, basically. Like, it ranged from like parts of Mexico all the way through Central, all the way to like the very tippity top of South America, I believe. And then, you know, Spanish, Mediterranean, and then like European, right? Typical Latin, like, I don't know, some sub-Saharan African, which is all a typical admixture for a Latino person. So I knew he didn't lie, but then this was the issue. I plugged my, it's funny, I plugged my DNA results into AI, and they're like, well, there's a huge chance you could be Mexican. And I'm like, no freaking way. And then he was like, well, the probability based on if I just look at half of your DNA coming from your biological sperm donor based on everything that I can calculate, and da, 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 he could be Mexican. And I was like, oh my God, what if I'm Mexican? There's nothing wrong with Mexicans. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, what if I was Mexican and he was adopted from Mexico? It's not a big deal. But it's kind of annoying, right? Like, I already cried my tears of frustration for being lied to, and now I just find it kind of ridiculous. Right now, as we speak, it is Monday, August 3rd. So on Saturday, I think it was the 31st, I bought the ancestry test because I wanted to find living relatives. And my husband and I have been doing a lot of research, especially my husband. The poor man, he's working nonstop, day and night, trying to find whatever little bit of information he can find on this man. And this is the issue, because Ross, the sperm donor, is still alive. I can't unseal his documents. And this is the other thing. He told me before I stopped talking to him that if I wanted to know my origins, if I wanted to know my history, if I wanted to know the truth about where he came from, if it was El Salvador, what part of El Salvador, if my grandparents were actually still alive, or my aunts and uncles, all this, he said, if you want this information, then you have to have a relationship with me, or I'm not telling you anything. Like, he was blackmailing me. He was emotionally blackmailing me. So I said, no amount of unhappiness that you are going to cause me, because I can feel it in my bones and my female intuition. The pain that you're going to cause me is worth me having a relationship with you to find out the truth about where I come from, because I can just be really sad and depressed and just feel like there's an empty hole in me for the rest of my life. And I can live with that. What I can't live with is the potential assault that I could have gone through. So I was good. I will be posting, as I have promised, more diverse content and more life-related content and things that aren't just always makeup, because I decided that it's just too hard for me. I love makeup, but I do not always wear makeup. And it's not because I don't like makeup, it's because I don't have as much time as I wish I had. And then the time that I do have, I kind of want to draw too. Like, I have other hobbies besides makeup. And you know what's making it really hard? It's just making it really hard for me to upkeep only one account on one topic. You're going to be seeing videos of me reclaiming my heritage, talking about genealogy and stuff like this and what's going on with this situation, where I'm still going to be talking about makeup, but I want to diversify what we're going to be talking about here because listen, it's too hard for me to have a makeup account and a digital drawing account and a traditional drawing account and me enjoying playing with my tattoo gun account and then me also doing special effects because I like that. Yeah, it's too much. So I decided that I'm going to have my, couple backup accounts. What you're going to be seeing on my YouTube channel from this point on is going to be the same topics as always. Makeup. We're going to be adding in skincare, fragrance, most likely. But I also want to talk about movies. I am obsessed with movies, especially horror movies. And I am obsessed with alt beauty, alt fashion, alt pop culture, stuff like that. So I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to find, the rhythm and how I want to do this, but I am definitely very much so an unscripted person. I have many a times tried to script videos and it didn't work for me. So we're not going to do that. Doesn't work for me. I sound like a robot. I sound really unnatural. I feel unnatural and uncomfortable. I'm more of I rather edit it out later type of person than being a perfect type of person. You know what I'm saying? I haven't even introduced myself yet. If you are still here, my name is Heather. Heather Palomo. I am, a multifaceted artist and individual. Cringe. But if you're enjoying this content or if you're interested in the journey, don't forget to smash the notification bell so you don't miss an upload from me. Like the video, comment below, save, share with a friend, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.